Well, the defense has rested today in the first day of Julian Assange's extradition hearing. NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden said this is the most important press freedom case in the world. It's being decided this week. I don't think anyone could argue against that. So day one of the hearing just wrapped up in London, and journalist Taylor Hudak was inside the courthouse all day today, trying to listen in to what the defense was presenting here, making their case that Assange should not be sent to the United States, should not be extradited to the United States. And Taylor joins us now just outside of the courthouse, just walking out there after the defense has rested. Taylor, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show. You sort of set the stage. What was it like outside the courthouse and inside the courthouse before we get into the nuts and bolts of what you saw today?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me to speak about this very important press freedom and human rights case. That is, of course, the prosecution and extradition proceedings of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. I'm outside the courthouse. This is the Royal Courts of Justice behind me, where we just wrapped up the first day of this two-day appeal hearing. And this is, or very well could be, Julian Assange's last attempt to appeal before the domestic UK courts. Now, when I first arrived here at about 9:15 this morning, I was blown away by how many supporters and protesters were here standing up for Julian Assange. They were standing up for press freedom, gathered outside here. And then in the courtroom, it was a packed courthouse. They actually had a spillover room for those who were not able to make it into the main courtroom. I was fortunate enough to be placed in the main courtroom, and I have to say that the defense has an unbelievably strong argument. Now, what they are arguing for is for this panel of two high court judges to allow them to appeal this case once again domestically in the UK. So the outcome of this case is that either Assange will have that opportunity to appeal once again and potentially prevent his extradition to the United States, or what could happen is that he would enter into the extradition process, which for those who care about free speech, that is certainly not something that we would want to happen, and those who also care about the free press. So it was a really strong and positive day in court, and both of the attorneys who are representing Assange made excellent points in court today.
So people can follow along with your court coverage, by the way, I should point out, on your Telegram channel. Can you share that with our audience so if people want to follow you while you're inside the courtroom over the next few days, first of all?
Yes, of course. I've been doing my best to update my Telegram channel. It's Taylor Hudak News at Taylor Hudak. I'm also active on Twitter, but I didn't go the live tweeting route this time. I decided to post updates there. Again, that's at Taylor Hudak Media on Telegram. And I try to keep everybody as up to date as possible. A few key points from today that will be of interest to the listeners, many Americans as well, is the fact that once on U.S. soil, if Assange is extradited, let's hope he's not. It's still unclear at this point. He may not be extradited. But if he is not going to be granted First Amendment protections because he is not American. He's an Australian citizen. So despite the fact that he is charged by the U.S. government, despite the fact that he would be tried on U.S. soil, he is not afforded those protections. However, he is still subjected to the Espionage Act. And in fact, the defense argued that once on U.S. soil, they could bring forth additional charges, which could possibly include treason, which would also make him potentially eligible for the death penalty. And anyone who's familiar with extradition law knows, especially in the extradition treaties with European governments and the U.S. government, oftentimes, almost always, I want to say, that extradition is barred if the death penalty is a possibility. So that's also a very strong point in this case. And also the fact that he cannot be extradited to the United States for political purposes, and that is under the U.S.-UK extradition treaty, Article 4.
Right. That's a great point. Of course, the being extradited for political purposes. How could anyone read this anything other than politically motivated prosecution of Julian Assange?
Exactly.
I don't know. I think you'd have to be a mental patient, operating at that level. So when you were sitting there listening to the defense today, what were some of your key takeaways? And you said earlier that you thought they laid out a really strong case today. What stood out to you?
What stood out to me was the extensive amount of case law that supports their own legal case that they're fighting right now, the legal precedent that has already been set. Additionally, what was a very important point is that this would be an unprecedented case. This would be the first time that a journalist would be tried under the U.S. Espionage Act for the receipt, for obtaining and publishing classified material. This is something that journalists do all the time, and they're seeking to criminalize that. And there has been cases. There was one that was mentioned back in 2006 where they were potentially going to punish a journalist, or charge him rather, under the Espionage Act for publishing. They chose not to do that in the United States, and therefore the case never went forward. So that was strong in Assange's favor.
And so do you think that the judge was moved by these arguments?
That's a really good point. So I did, be sure to pay attention to the judges here. And I noticed that one of the judges was shaking her head a few times. They did ask several questions, which I think is normal, and which they are, able to do, of course. I think that's sort of part of the UK procedure. But there's also another thing that I want to address for the listeners. They're going to find this point interesting, because this was not something I myself was all too familiar with, despite covering this case for quite a while now, was the fact that the defense lawyer was asking what triggered this prosecution at this specific time. Remember, Assange is being charged for publications that were released back in around 2010. The charges did not come out until around 2016, 2017. And so he was asking what triggered this, and what does that say about the state's motivations, the state being the U.S. government. And in fact, the International Criminal Court, or ICC, announced that it was going to launch an investigation due to these publications that were released by WikiLeaks shortly after this announcement, and its intention to investigate. That is the ICC's intention to investigate. The United States public officials began to refer to Julian Assange very publicly as a political actor. And then famously in 2017, then director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, referred to Julian Assange as a non-state hostile intelligence agency, or WikiLeaks rather, as a non-state hostile intelligence agency, which is actually very significant because that holds some legal weight, in fact, using that exact phrase. But it is interesting to note that the ICC would have to rely on Julian Assange as part of their investigation. And it was at the same time, shortly thereafter, that these charges were then brought forth against Mr. Assange. So that's just another interesting piece of evidence. Yes, it is circumstantial evidence, but I think it's important for people to be aware of, and then they can make up their own minds of what that means and what that timing, what it signifies.
So that, of course, is the legal side of all of this. What about the health and well-being of Julian Assange? Did this come up in any of the discussions today? Never being able to be in the same house as his children, for crying out loud, and the conditions being... I mean, we've talked about this on our show, but of course you've had other people awaiting extradition. They've been put up in cushy environments right outside of Buckingham Palace in beautiful arrangement. And here you have Julian Assange wallowing away, wasting away basically in Belmarsh prison. So did this come up today?
Exactly. He's been in prison, in Belmarsh prison, for almost 5 years now. Now, at the start of the hearing, it was mentioned by the judge straight away that Mr. Assange did request for permission to attend in person. He was granted that permission, but he did not attend because of his health. The judge did not disclose any further, and beyond that, his health was not addressed in the court. But it's important for people to remember that the lower court judge, the district judge, Vanessa Baratzer, initially denied the extradition request on grounds that it would be oppressive to extradite Assange to the United States due to his health condition and his mental condition. She felt that it would be oppressive, citing Section 91 of the UK Extradition Act. So important to remember, this case was initially, or this extradition order was initially rejected for health reasons. And while we do talk a lot about the legal points, technical aspects of the case, this is a human being. He's a father, a son, a brother, a friend to many people, and he's suffering tremendously. That's what is stated by his family members. He's suffering. They are also suffering, that they can't be with him.
It's just absolutely awful. I know it's freezing there. You've been so kind and gracious with your time after this hearing today. I'll let you go on this, which is, what do you expect tomorrow for the second day?
Yes. So earlier that the defense has rested its case today. There's 1 day left tomorrow, and we expect the prosecution to rebut the arguments that were presented today. Now they have the chance to present their argument, and then it's still unclear whether or not the judges will issue a decision tomorrow or if it will take a few weeks. Historically, with this case, it has taken a few weeks. I do think that is pretty standard, but I will be doing my best to keep everyone posted in real time on my Telegram channel, again, at Taylor Hudak Media, and then also on my Twitter, which is @_Taylor Hudak. I would encourage everybody listening, please talk to your friends, your family members, your neighbors about this case. Raise awareness. If you're in the United States, contact the White House in a polite and respectful way. Share your concerns about this case also with your local representatives, and do act now to make a difference, because everybody's right to know and access information is at stake.
100%. 100%. Taylor Hudak, live for us tonight outside of the courthouse, covering the first day of the Julian Assange hearing. We appreciate it very, very much, and we'll be following along with you as your coverage unfolds. Thank you so much, Taylor. And please.
Thank you for having me.
Go get warm. Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Taylor. We appreciate it. And I should also mention, in addition to her Telegram channel, she's also posting updates on activism Munich on YouTube as well, so she can check that out. So thanks to Taylor for that. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. You know, YouTube thinks that you'll actually like this next video right here. It's personalized based on your own viewing habits. So if you watch the video, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think about it, and we will see you next time, everyone.